Time is now 9 a.m. The date is January 12th, 2016. This is a scheduled workshop for the Board of County Commissioners on this day. I'd like to welcome everyone here and thank you for taking part in your local government. I'd like to remind everyone about your cell phones. Please silence them at this time. Board members, please turn off the vibration on them. We just remind everybody kind of one of the main rules here is at a workshop. In a workshop setting, we can discuss many things, but we can't make any decisions about anything. So during this time, during this deliberative process, we would leave from here, come back at a regularly scheduled meeting, and implement any policy change at that point in time. We all know that during that period of time, anything can happen, and may deviate from the discussion that has occurred here today. So I just want to make people aware of that. To get things started here today, we'd like to start with the invocation and the pledge, and I'll do the invocation. Our Lord God, we thank you for the time that we have to come here together and do the county's business. We ask that you watch over us here today. Please help us to make proper decisions. Please lead us. Please give us the courage and the wisdom. Please give us forethought and foresight in all of our processes here. Please help us in our daily needs. We thank you for the level of health that you give us on a daily basis. We thank you for the lives of our spouses and our children, our first responders, and also our soldiers who protect all of those above. We thank you for our country. We ask that you continue to guide the lawmakers in our state and our federal government as they need you so desperately at this time. We beg for forgiveness of our sins, and we ask all this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, board members. Item number 1 on our agenda this morning is to discuss the security of the county commission meeting room. I had a discussion with the sheriff and Chief Deputy Ron Colvin, and just due to the state of things in our country nowadays, and also the thought of lack of security in regards to people and public nature of the meetings, I've asked him about providing us a deputy to sit in on the meetings. He said that he would be pleased to do that at no cost to the board. So in light of that, I just bring it up at this workshop for any discussion that you gentlemen may have. If there's no discussion, then that's fine too. It's really not something that we necessarily need to vote on, but because there's no money expended, that could change in the future should our needs change in the next budget cycle. But currently, we can do that at no charge.
Chairman, I have a comment. I just like to say that I think that would be a very good idea. If you have law enforcement in your meetings, you have to do things in order if there is a problem like that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else?
I don't have a problem with it. I hate to think that we're going to need it, but that's one of the things that if you're going to provide it at no cost to the board, in the year, you don't want to start making those plans after you have an incident happen. I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Just be prepared better than looking back and saying we should. Mr. Wainwright?
Yeah.
Moving on, we'll move on and to discuss the Suwannee County Museum Association. This is an issue that's kind of been festering through the years, I know, and it came to my attention that it's operating outside of the bounds of policy we've established in regards to how it should, in terms of expired. It seems to me that the Historical Commission is very active and involved in the community, and maybe we should have some discussion about possibly sunsetting the Museum Association and placing that under the Historical Commission. alternatives to operating the museum complex, and they feel very comfortable working with the current museum association. Some of the proposals that have been circulated to me involve working with them closely. So I don't know if there's anyone here. Right before we do that, I just want to open it up to board discussion, and then perhaps there'll be some persons here from the various associations who want to speak as well.
Is there anyone here from the museum?
Yeah, they're here. I was just asking if there was any board discussion comments prior to.
Chairman, I'll start off. I've had conversation with both the members from the Museum Association as well as the Historical Commission, and not in light of us having an open workshop, over the past several years. I think they get the feeling that a merger is coming, and my suggestion to them over and over again, work it out yourselves. Your two groups come up with a merger that works for both of you. I don't know that, I believe if it comes to the board, you're not gonna like the merger. But, that's been going on for years, and I don't know if there's been any headway with them working any merger out amongst themselves.
Well, in my discussions with them, they both groups have had some discussions talking about potential merger. And I've had discussions with the chairman of the Historical Commission, and he's provided us some information. I forwarded it to Mr. Batt to look it over. Mr. Batt, do you have any comments? I haven't seen him back. Is there anybody here from either party that wants to speak to the board? Come forward.
My name's Sam Carter. I've been involved with the museum since back about 1985. I have a copy of the interlocal agreement between the county and the city. Also have a copy of the bylaws for the museum. I've been treasurer a lot of this time. We can only hold office for 1 year, and then you can hold it for another year, at 2 years maximum, then somebody else holds it. Really not in favor of two joining. We have failed to get to you the request for, officers or board members, but we have taken care, we've done it within our meetings whenever the time was due, but that information just didn't get to you, properly. That's where the whole, as far as that's concerned. Our other requirements for the bylaws and everything, we have complied with. It doesn't take, I think, there's some 18 members on the Historical Commission. There's 9 members on our commission, on the association thing. It doesn't take all those people to oversee the museum. We have gone through some changes as far as the person that runs the museum daily. The last few years, we really needed to make some changes in there, in that leader, in that position for some time, and it took us a while to get it done, and then we've got Faye on board, and Faye's doing a good job for us. She's very honest and all. And of course, I don't think she's here today because Richard's in the hospital. John Hales, board member, he's here. Alonzo, hey, all right, we have several here, and really, yes, we didn't follow through and get, of course, Faye's been up there, about 2 years, and prior to that, Carol Herring was our director, and Carol was Johnny on the spot. Then we had another gentleman after Carol passed away. Wasn't necessarily Johnny on the spot. I mean, was with what he wanted to do, but not necessarily for the museum. And it took quite some time to get him down the road without just coming out and firing him, because, we didn't want any legal problems there or anything like that. But anyway, whenever he decided to get on down the road, and then we got Faye in there, I think things going to work. We've always had a really good working relationship with the Historical Commission. This past summer, I had the opportunity to visit about 10 museums throughout the western part of the United States, in Iowa, North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, all like that. All of them operate, majority of them operate just like we do. They're free. You put in some donations to it, with the exception of Buffalo Bill Cody Museum in Cody, Wyoming, $17 to get in there, but it's a big, huge thing. Also in Lamar's, Iowa, well, that was free. It's one up in Montana. I can't think of the name of the town right now. But anyway, there was a fee in that, but it was to go on the tour. You could go in and just in the museum part, but, and this we're in talking with all those people at those different museums, the amount of the money that they got from the counties to operate was a lot more than what we're getting. But anyway, that's basically all I have. If you have any questions, I'd like to try to answer those for you, or maybe some of the other board members could.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Somebody from the Museum Association spoke, Mr. Hales. Would you like to speak for the Historical Commission in any way, shape, or form?
Well, if our chair is going to take a pass, I guess I will.
That was my understanding.
Oh, okay. I'm Danny Hales. Want me to give my address and stuff, or is that sufficient? Okay.
Mr. Attorney, what do you think? We'll stay in the habit.
Okay. We have worked with associates for years. We've heard, just as y'all have been talking, that there's been some talk about possibly merging the two units. We met together, the boards met together. Was that November, end of November? Where'd you go, Sam? And, being aware that there was some talk amongst both the city and possibly in the county. And we agreed to put a task force together. This was in November. We didn't do anything in December. To get together in January and look at possibilities of a merger. And there's 3 people appointed on the task force from the associates and 3 people on the task force from the commission. We have not met yet. We're just, getting into this new year. So that's where we stand right now. So we want to look at it and see. As Sam said, he's very upfront about it. Said he's not too sure he'd like to do that, but he's going to sit on the task force and listen because he's a smart fellow. He's a learned man, and he at least wants to listen. And so we want to have the opportunity to at least if we can move this forward and keep doing that, no matter what sort of, I know you can't take action today, but that's where we stand. And Sam's just a little wrong. We're not 18 members. I think we're 12. Yeah. But that's just peanuts.
Thank you.
Any questions?
In what, I guess what we need to do, we have about 4 options here that we're going to talk about. And we realistically need to know what is the, is there, I think this has been tried in the past, but not to merge the two, and there's been some discussion, there's been some sort of friction between the 2 groups. So what are the chances of this actually happening?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with the friction between the 2 groups. There might have been an individual or 2 that maybe didn't get along with each other, but the groups as a whole have worked extremely well together to present and provide to the county a very operative museum and all of the things that the museum commission, has done. We have not seen, Eric has done some of this work of doing some legwork ahead of time. They have not seen some of the proposals, and the commission has not seen some of the proposals. So it's hard for me to answer anything, in regard to that right now. I know that there's 3 or 4 ideas, of how to do it. Okay?
Any other questions? In working with the chairman of the historical commission, this is what was presented to me. Were several options that the board has here today, whether we want to decide to continue to operate the museum as it is currently done. Contract of operation, there's no changes. Very clean. Cons to that are the city and the county are paying 2 separate entities. Question arise between 2 entities, such as who pays for what at the museum, and which building we use for historical commission functions versus museum functions, and when functions are put on, who is in charge of them. Uncertainty from the general public. There's no other county and state that appears to use this method of operation. Option 2 is we merge the historical commission and association into a new historical entity, and that is what Mr. Hales was talking about. They met in November 2015, and they contacted the Museum Association, and they decided to set up a task force. The new entity would provide for clear authority and establishment of one entity to address the challenges in the day-to-day operation and eliminate ambiguities of who pays for what. Only one entity receiving funding from the city and the county, unified front before the historical commission and the museum association. Better and speedier service instead of having to wait for 2 separate entities to work out and agree with specific plans. 7, possible inclusion of 1 city councilman and 1 county commissioner and 1 town of Brantford councilman. Would allow each government entity to know what's going on and for the new historical entity to have a voice on all government boards. The cons to that are unanimous agreement on the merger between the 2 entities may not be possible. 2, the city or the county will decide that 1 entity does not need as much funding as the 2 and cut funding, and there would be a challenge of disbanding the 2 existing entities and creating new. Option 3 is we disband the museum association, transfer all funding, contents, etc. to the historical commission, and update the historical commission's interlocal agreement to accommodate the changes. The historical commission would set up a museum advisory council made up of members of the public and of former members of the museum association, as well as 1 historical commission member to advise and assist the historical commission on museum operation. Option 4 would be disband the museum Association transfer all funding to contents to the Historical Commission and update the Historical Commission and local agreement to accommodate changes. There are pros and cons to all of these options, gentlemen. But it is my contention that I don't know that the outlook would be good for them to work out a merger and just continue to be on our plate, so to speak, which is why we're discussing it here today. So if there's any discussion on this, I'd entertain it, or if you want me to, well, just let's have some discussion. If you want to, if you don't, then I'll forward these options around to you, unless the attorney has any objections.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Wayne?
About, they've already begun the effort to try to, merge, improve, whatever the case may be. We just set a deadline for them. Give you 3 months and let's get it wrapped up and let them decide what to do.
Mr. Hales and Mr. Carter, is 3 months sufficient time to, for you guys to work together and bring back a report to the board?
We're all volunteers, we all, none of us are employed by the museum or the association. My personal feeling is 3 months is not enough. This is fairly complicated. There's 2 sets of interlocal agreements that create the individual 2 bodies. I'm not sure that 3 months is enough, but if that's what the deadline, if that's what you want to give us, that's what you give
Why
us.
don't we just wrap it up by the time we get to the budget discussions?
Budget time.
We've already funded for this year,
We start hammering budget in October, or not October, excuse me, August. Let's just maybe wrap it up by August or September.
So a date certain would be August 31st, or I mean, is that right? August 31st. Oh, we just gotta give them a deadline. And then they need to have us report of what they've done. Either A, it should be a short and sweet letter, says we were unable to reach an agreement, or 2,
Here's a
here's
proposal.
our proposal.
I would say July 31st, prior to that,
Way,
7 months prior to the budget workshop.
Let's do that, July
Whatever you do.
31st.
July 31st, so you just lost one.
Well, we start,
And just may I make it clear that we are going to be bringing a proposal back to you. You are the entity
I know.
that has to do the interlocal agreements.
I know, and that's why I say
I
we
just wanted the public to know that, we're not just telling you how it's gonna be.
yeah, I would
We're
like,
just gonna bring a proposal to
I
you.
mean, my druthers just to deal with it now and go on down the road, but we're a board and we make decisions. So July 31st, prior to that, or after, prior to the first meeting in August, is that what you guys are saying?
we start having our budget workshops in August, so
Just
that way we'll have it. by the
First
time we
meeting in
get there.
August is have us a proposal by then. Agreed? All right, moving on to number 3, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait to do that one, when we discuss number 6. That's okay with everybody, seems like that's on everybody's radar. Let's talk about number 4, discuss the structure of the county commission meetings. There was some discussion about structuring the meetings with some new rules and regulations, and after some staff has prepared some backup for us here in regards to Florida statute, and we can, again, we have options here. We can continue as such, or we can adopt some rules. So I'm going to open it up to discussion now on this issue. For those who want to start off. I would take it. Okay. Commissioner Dean.
I'm for setting some rules. I want to set guidelines as far as the amount of time. We've gotten away from 3 minutes.
I agree with that. I mean, if they wanna say 5 people show up and they all wanna give one person 3 minutes, I don't know. Mr. Wayne,
I'm okay with all that, I'd also like to, for us to consider rebuttals. I mean, we get return visits,
right.
we go back over a point that was missed or whatever. I'm all for letting,
Well, I think one thing we have to be firm on is it's comment, it's not debate.
exactly.
And you got, it's not everybody, but you got a few people that if they want to turn it into an argument or a debate, and that's not the time and place for that. They got something they want to debate, you know, just individually, or to the other. But we can place on the agenda. But as far as comment time, it's comments. You got an idea, you got something, but when you get the board also, here's your idea, does it take the action appropriate that you thought, does it become a debate at that point? It's comments, so I think that's the difference there.
You guys have any comments on time constraints related to items that are not on the agenda, things that are not being considered by the board, as opposed to, say, we just want to bring something up, and so you go, well, we're not, it's nothing that we're considering, should we limit that to 3 minutes, or a minute and a half, or 2 minutes?
I'm not saying you limit it to 3 minutes. You got to think the only time anyone has a chance to talk to all 5 board members at one time is in the meeting session. And they may have something they want to bring to us that we've never considered. It's not ever going to be on our agenda. I don't want to limit them to a minute and a half. I would rather stay at 3 minutes. That's where a lot of this has come from over the past several months. There's been a lot of stuff that's not on the agenda that we don't even have jurisdiction over, that people are coming in really wanting to voice their opinion on. And if we have a structure where you give them their 3 minutes, their 3 minutes is up, they go on, next one comes up. It's our job to sit through it. I don't want to limit them. I mean, this is the only time they have an opportunity to come to the board and be recognized to speak to the entire board on anything that's going on in the community they have concern about.
Mr. Harris, you have a comment?
I was just going to say, in this packet, if you look at your first page, it's a mirror reflection of guidance given by the statute. You go through and just fill in these blanks. It'll make it a lot easier for staff to bring something back for you to adopt. Literally, the statute is right behind it. It tells you what you can do, what you can regulate. So it follows from A through D.
I want to go back to Commissioner Wainwright's point about rebuttals. I think it kind of deviated from that a little bit. It is comment and concern, so what does the board feel about Richard's stance on rebuttal?
Ricky addressed that, I mean, it's not a debate.
Well, I understand, but
Yeah.
if the chairman takes a stance and then there's no backup, the board goes, well, that was, then there's no, then it's either rebuttals or no rebuttals.
Let me clarify what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is when there's a host of individuals, including ourselves, that have made comments, and then, and quite possibly in most cases, there's already a motion and a second on the floor, and this is just discussion part. But for somebody to come back a second or third or fourth time to add additional comments, I don't think that that's appropriate.
I would agree, but there was no guidelines before, and it's just kind of the way we've done things in the past.
Well,
I don't mind taking it.
I think we need to be more consistent, that's obvious, but, the rebuttal side, what Wesley's talking about, there are things that come up in a lot of meetings that come up in successive meetings. We've already made a ruling on something, then that should be it. We don't need to bring it up again, it's already done, unless it's on the agenda to be brought up the proper way. And then, getting back to the minutes, we need to be consistent. Some people talk 10, 12, 15 minutes, some people have been limited to 3. So I think across the board, we need to hold tight to rules and limit the minutes. And keep up with
3 minutes. And I was looking at the statute. It said the board had the opportunity to establish the protocol on these individuals when they come. I don't have a problem with speaking, but at least 3 minutes and not 4 or 5 times.
Agreed. Okay, if we look at what was prepared for us here, if you look at item number A on the tab 4, I believe in the book, it says amount of time for speaking for the individual. It says items on the agenda, items not on the agenda. Does anybody want to enter 3 minutes on both of those? Is that the consensus of the board?
3 minutes, fine.
And we go to B, groups or factions representing a position on a proposition or issue are required to select a single representative or spokesman. The designated representative will be allowed to speak in accordance with the following time allocation. Items on the agenda, items not on the agenda. Say 3 minutes.
No more than 5. 3 minutes.
Well, what I'm saying is,
If it's a group,
right, well, I'm getting that.
You come in and here's the thing, I think you need to pick a number 5 to 7, maybe on 15 to 20 minutes.
Well, what,
If that's what you're talking about. But if you get a group that's really opposed to something, kind of like in some of these last meetings, they can bring 20 people in here and want 3 minutes apiece, and you're an hour.
well, and that allows for the flexibility of, you know, and of course you have faith in the chairman, so, you know, you're saying the same things over and over, you know, we need to move on. But you're right, I mean, 5 to 7 could be reasonable, but if you're discussing an issue that has some substance to it, and the guy's moving through, or the guy or gal's moving through, then you may need another 3 minutes.
That may be something they need to place on the agenda.
I was gonna say, as a group, I would say that they have to get all their bullet points, and they have one spokesman that has to get 5 points, then it may take them 10 minutes. But if we limit it to 10 for the whole discussion from a representative from a group, then you got 10 minutes. You're not gonna get three for 20 people.
So what do you want to put on this one? It can either be 5 or 7 or 10, whatever, but I think there needs to be a number. I'm saying that, you forget.
No,
You
yeah.
forget.
I would say no more than 10 if it's representing an entire group with a lot of issues. But, I mean, y'all, so you think that, I think you can get a major point across for a big topic in 10 minutes.
I don't think we need to sit here and pause to see how long 10 minutes is. Quite a while.
Please don't.
I'm thinking 5 individuals at 3 minutes each, that's why I think that's 15 minutes.
15. And that would be
That's if one person's coming up there to represent the group.
on an issue that it is or is not on the agenda. Both?
I think if you get much more than 15 minutes for an item that's not on the agenda, something they bring up at public comments and concerns, when they come in and want to do a presentation, their comments and concerns, I think that's an item that they should do like anyone else in the community and have placed on the agenda if they got that much concern about it.
Right. Okay, so you're saying, so what does the board want, 10 minutes or 15 minutes? And that was about where we're at, option wise. 15 minutes is considered.
I think 7 minutes is really gracious. I mean, really, if you get up there and you speak at that podium for 7 minutes, that's a long time. That's a lot of information you spit out.
I'm okay
If
with
it's more than that, I think, just like Commissioner Gamble, I think they need to put it on the agenda, or have it considered for the agenda.
So are we okay with 7 minutes? And then if, now this begs another question, if we get something on the agenda, then the time is unlimited at that point. Somebody comes up before the board, or do we need to establish some sort of time? Because if they call in and the chairman allows it to be put on the agenda, how much time does the speaker have to address the board?
The speaker that placed it on the agenda? Well, I'm saying that they would have enough time to present their case and any board discussion, at which time the board can either take action or move on to the next item. But you got two things there, you got people that want to come up and speak on it, and you got the person presenting.
establish those two things. I guess it just comes up that if we've said, and we brought up in this discussion, that if they have the foresight to put it on the agenda, and they come forward and they get a group, and then we have some discussion, because quite frankly, on some of the A and B things, we still may have some discussion on items that people bring to the board and address with us. So, especially if there's a particular, it's a special concern to an individual commissioner, they may want to discuss it a little bit. So I guess moving on to things where a person puts it on the agenda, how much time do we allow? Because I mean, there's no time limit right now.
Once it makes it on the agenda, I'm fine with there not being a time limit on their presentation, because if you don't hear it out in the entirety and discuss it in the entirety, it's just gonna keep coming back. You're not listening. And they've got to get their thought out, so I don't wanna, that part hasn't been a problem for us in the past, with people putting an item on the agenda and it taking an excessive amount of time. Usually they come up, they have a presentation prepared, they make that presentation, we discuss it, community members come up, discuss it, and we're on to the next item.
Would that be like any other agenda item? Like 3 minutes?
Yeah, the only reason I brought it up is it comes into to where you gentlemen have to tell a particular entity or person, hey, call up and ask to have that thrown on the agenda, as opposed to just coming and addressing the board. You know, so you would say, well, you have X amount of time to talk about this issue. So it hasn't been a problem. We've talked about the difference of non-agenda items versus agenda items. So that's the only reason I brought it up.
Me, Mr. Chairman, I would say let's go like any other agenda item.
Once it makes the agenda, it's like anything else on the agenda.
All right, let's see.
What if it isn't on the agenda?
We established that.
7 minutes on that.
For a group, 7 minutes for a group, or 3 minutes for an individual. 7 minutes for somebody that represents a group of people.
It's not on the agenda.
Correct.
Right.
Now, item C, form for individuals or groups to use who wish to speak to the board or register support or opposition to an issue. There is one provided.
This, Mr. Chairman, was a draft, and it really has a lot of blanks in it, because there was no way to finish it until the board made decisions on that first page.
Going over the request for public comments, I guess we could include or not include some of the things on the sheet. Anybody have any preference? Would you like the sheet?
We're gonna let them even if they don't have it. If you're gonna have a form like we've had in the past, I'm okay with that. They're just a one-line deal where they just might wanna indicate what they wanna speak about, or what particular issue they wanna speak about, that's fine.
Well,
No more than that, I don't think, or any more than that, I don't think it's necessary.
the intent of the sheet is to give the preference to the board. Chairman would read the sheet out and see if it's something that the board wanted to hear about. So it gives you the power.
So I mean, just what we've had in the past has been working, they just, just a little one-line deal where.
Well, but what he's saying is, so that we can read them off and then decide whether or not we want them to speak or not.
Yeah.
But public comment and concern, like I said earlier, that's the only time they have the opportunity to speak to all 5 commissioners at one sitting. And I don't want to limit them and say, well, we're not going to hear that now because we don't want to. They get their 3 minutes to come up there and fuss, rant, praise, do whatever they want to do for 3 minutes.
They don't need to
I mean,
check
it
on the
doesn't matter
sheet.
if they want to talk about needing more room at the dog kennel, hotline, and whatever it is, whether we want to hear it or not. That's their only opportunity to come to the board and say, I've got a concern and I want to hear it.
Well, it helps the board determine what they're about to hear about, but also it puts into place practice for growth. I mean, one day, you'll all be here in front of maybe all day listening to stuff. So, you don't have a problem now with a bunch of comment cards, which may in the future. So it just keeps a policy in place so that you can have it, although it may not be a problem now.
There is one other thing on this form, if you look down to number 3. That was in this draft because of the statute. The statute suggested a form, or provides for a form that gives the public an opportunity to make a comment in writing for those that are fearful of speaking in public. Fill that here. So that's the reason that number 3 was on there, to reflect what was in the statute. They can make a comment in writing in front of the chairman read it. And they have an opportunity to express their opinion for or against an issue, proposition for the board. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot of difference.
So if you want to do away with the sheet, get them used to not having it, and then have this discussion again in later years about bringing it back, and you have a number of people that want to address the board at some point in time, and that's fine.
I like to just have the public comment sheet, just do a one-liner, what they're interested in talking about.
It gives,
Well, should we add that number 3 in what he's talking about? I mean, it's,
You do that, you're gonna get untold people that don't want to speak, and then if you're gonna have to read them into the record, I would just assume not. If they've got something that's important enough that they wanna get across, they'll make a phone call to get up to speak. But I'm not interested in, that's no different than getting, petitions.
so we leave it as it is, and we have a basic sheet now. If you guys want to do it, kind of give the speaker an introduction, or you can just be surprised.
leave it as it is.
All right. Number 5, discuss.
Excuse me, Jason.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can public comment at any point during this, or are we gonna wait till y'all get finished?
You want to say something, say something. It's fairly informal.
Okay? Yes, first thing I've got to say is, y'all are all elected officials. The taxpayers pay your salary. When you were campaigning, you told us what your positions were, you answered our questions at that time. There was no time limit on any of that, other than whatever you might want to have put on it, at least in my case. Now, I have a big problem with this. So, you want to limit public time, and I can see, based on some of what's going on in some of the other meetings, I can understand that. I don't have a problem with limiting time. What's coming across sitting out here is today you're in a workshop setting. There was no published agenda for this workshop. Last Tuesday, when y'all, at the conclusion of the meeting, regular board meeting, when this was to be discussed, or you were setting a time for the workshop, I asked Jason where this thing was going to be. You knew it was going to be at 9 o'clock, either here or at City Hall. But there was no decision made at that time. I called Mandy yesterday to make sure that it was, I knew where it was going to be, but there was no agenda put out that I saw for what was to be discussed. If there had been an agenda put out, if this item was on there, I would imagine you might have had more people in attendance to speak on this. So the board doesn't have, in my opinion right now, the transparency that it needs to do, indeed. But I can also take offense at the chairman, whomever it might be, to sit up there and say he may or may not allow a person to speak at public comment. As
only time that the public can address all five of you at the same time. I have called and spoke to every one of you at various times since you've been on this board. Sometimes I might wait a day or 2 days to get a phone call back if you're busy. I understand that. But when I have a question, especially if it's something that y'all are discussing, sitting up there at the board, a lot of times I can get up and make my comment, and then you have a question, then there's more discussion. But I've already spoke for my 3 minutes, and now y'all have gone back and maybe on something I have discussed. You had questions, and y'all discuss some more, which could maybe bring up more questions, but from the rule you just passed, I can't get back up there, because I've already spoke for my 3 minutes. Are you trying to tell the people that you don't want to hear what they have to say, that once you're elected, then you can pretty much do what you would now in the catbird seat making the decisions? Is the question I have, because that's what I see coming down the pipe. That's just me.
Wait. Some of this gets out of control. Hold on.
I mean,
Commissioner, wait a minute. Jimmy has his hand up first. Commissioner speak.
Mr. Hancock made a reference that we're limiting time to 3 minutes. The 3 minutes has been in place since I've been on the board. The thing that has changed since I've been on the board is every time a chairman changes, the procedure changes. And all I think we're really advocating for is a policy for the board to follow. That way, when the chairman does change, all of a sudden the speaking rules don't change. You've got chairmen that have been very lenient on the 3 minutes in the past and let people just go as long as they want, and that doesn't lead to a productive meeting. You've got chairmen in the past that have been very strict on that 3 minutes. And all I'm saying is, if we have a guidelines that the public knows is there, the commissions know that that's there, no matter who is sitting with that gavel, it's the same rules every time you come in. And I think that's the direction the board's wanting to go with it. It's not limiting anyone to speaking. We get paid to hear from the public. That's what we're here to do on our meeting. But you got to have structure, you got to have guidance in those meetings, or they're chaotic.
Mr. Bacall.
One more comment. Mr. Hancock said that what y'all just passed. I want to clarify again. We haven't passed anything. I just want to keep that clear in the audience's mind.
Moving on. Dr. Jackson, were you prepared to discuss vision for your company? Do you want to tie it into items 3 and 6? How did you want to?
I can just go quickly.
Okay, come on up. Now, we're on to item number 5, discuss vision for your company.
Great morning, Chairman, Board of County Commissioners. Just briefly, I was requested to just share on the kind of visioning or the need for that. But let me just kind of give a quick overview. Basically, it's really hats off and really showing that this county commission, its level of commitment to economic development. One, you opened and actually funded the Economic Development Office. Basically, we have established a website now, way of communicating. We have a growing inventory of sites. We have established a pretty aggressive marketing initiative. We have very good relationship with our partners, the City of Live Oak being one, the Suwannee Economic Development Authority, realtors, and other business partners. We've identified a target industry. We have identified and adopted land use changes, being the employment centers, those 5 employment centers, which has become our key economic locations. So when we're talking about vision, economic development vision, those are some of the key pieces that would be included. Now, there are some areas that we have some major deficits that I really would like for this board in the future to have a similar dialogue discussion, and those deficits is infrastructure, water and sewer, in those key economic development areas such as 136, 75, and some of the other areas. Now, we have a conundrum because the city of Live Oak has water and sewer, and so when I have companies that's looking, for instance, I have one now that's looking for 250 acres, but they want water and sewer. City of Live Oak doesn't have 250 acres. Many times, so that's a conundrum that we experience. And if they are locating further or need larger parcels, then we have a challenge. So that's something that we really need to address and take a long view at. The other one is the availability of inventory. You know, it's really trying to motivate, incentivize, encourage private development to actually do some speculative building. I came through Plant City last week, and you know the Amazon million-square-foot building is located there, not too far off of I-4. And basically, their geography, it's agriculture, and I wanted to know why. Well, when you look at County Line Road, where the Amazon is, there are flex space. Folks are building, developers are building spec buildings, and those spec buildings are actually being filled as they get built. So that's something that, you know, I really want us to have a discussion about. The other area is the deficit is world-class schools. And, you know, I'm already working with the superintendent of the school system on some initiatives there. Just briefly, your initiatives has, for the last year and a half, created about 5 new businesses or expansions, about 413 new jobs. That includes Klausner. We spent about $1.3 million, excuse me, we spent about $1.2 million, or we will, in incentives. That growth thus far will, at some point, put about $1.3 billion on the tax roll. For your investment of $1.2 million, that will be $169 million in return on investment. So, I guess when we are talking about economic development planning, it just can't be limited to economic development planning or vision. Economic development or economic visioning includes the whole array of counting services, infrastructure, and how do we get there. There are some factors. We have to look at population growth rate over the next 5-10 years. We have to be able to identify funding sources to implement those challenges. So what I'm talking about is long-range dialogue, looking long range. Where are we today? What do we need to be? What are the factors, the environmental factors, the economic factors, the internal factors, the housing challenges? And so what I've placed in your package is just some examples that actually I had the opportunity to work on. One is Lake County long-range forecast that's in their budget. And this was from 2002 and 2003. And I want to just say that in 96, 97, we started doing a biennial budget. And one of the reasons we did a biennial budget because it forced us to do a longer range planning. And so in doing that, definitely we need to analyze our financial indicators. I mean, from an economic development standpoint, we need to know that. We need to develop a forecast methodology. We need to forecast assumptions. How are we going to grow? How fast are we going to grow? What are state policies, how they're affecting us? The population growth, development, housing, retail, industrial. What's our unemployment rate? Is it going up, going down? What is the trend? And identify what I would call major expenditure assumptions. You know, this whole economic thing is impacted by salaries and wages that's going up. The Florida legislature right now, again, is talking about the Florida retirement, which could cost the counties more money, you know. Inflation. Assessed values. What's the trend on our assessed values? Our overall economic outlook. So that's this page here. When I was at the South Florida Water Management District, I implemented the biennial budget. And once again, the whole idea about budgets, the funding only funds what your plan has identified that needs to be funded. A part of that economic development plan is, if you go to the handout, why master plan? Plan for the plan. Visioning. It's not just economic development, it's the whole county. We need to do exploration. What's our needs assessment? Facility assessments, because as we grow from a population standpoint, you're going to need to provide more public services, which means more square footage for public facilities or something creative. And then look at those options and then prioritize what those needs are. And then over the next 10 years, basically make sure our funds are in place to implement those priorities. The final piece that I'm leaving with you is, because I know you're all going to have a discussion, and the chairman asked me to get some information, is a master space plan. This is a 15-year master space plan. And what it does, it actually lays out some methodology, formulas, and things that this county commission and this community need to look at. So when we talk about economic visioning, it's not just limited to economic development, but it's the whole economic outlook. Where we are today, where we're going to be in the next 5, 10 years, how we're going to pay for it, and how we structure our financial engine to make it happen. Any questions?
I think anytime we can have some planning process, some kind of vision, that we want to go, always positive. It's just a question of how we get it. All right. Unless there's some discussion about what's presented there.
The only thing I have to say is, I talked to Alvin about this, and before we brought it before the board, but we have a unique situation here in this county that we're not taking advantage of. As we all know, I-75 is the major artery going south of Orlando, and about 75 million people a year pass right by 136 and I-75. And that particular intersection, not to discount 129 and 10 or 90 and 10, it's got a lot of traffic. And I mean, the numbers are there. They say 100 million people a year come to Florida for different things. We need to look at that, because developing an intersection out there is going to bring us in a lot of revenue. I mean, what is it? What's our numbers now? Our ad valorem's $12 million a year, and our budget's $67 million. So we're on the hook from the state and federal to ask for that extra money every year. But if we had something bringing in all this, some of the money from these people going down the interstate, if they come into Florida and it's, we need to pull off right now. We finally made it to Florida. If we had the right amount of hotel rooms and possible retail and food that's 7.5 million people. You know what it takes to fill up a vehicle and go eat. Just that alone, even if we caught 10% of them, what it would do for our county as far as revenues. So we need to look at things like that. We need to look at long-range planning, not just, oh, we're going to do this next week and go out there and buy property. We need to look, like Alvin brought to us, at formulas and things where growth happens. Just even like the sheriff's department. We go from 44,000 people in the county to 144,000. We're going to need a lot more deputies. It's just the way it needs to be. So we need to look at these formulas and look at our assets that we're not taking advantage of and move forward as a county. That's really all I want to bring up.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. All right, let's move on to discuss, and we'll just kind of, whenever we get to this, discuss the possibilities of making one following demolition of the Navy Basic School. But we'll start the discussion on the capital improvement plan. And I think that pretty much centers around State's Attorney's Office and then governmental center discussion as we've been talking about the campus idea versus staying where we are. So I'll open up the floor to any discussion related to it.
I'll start it off. I've had something that copies of that I'll tell everybody about. We all discussed last meeting about some of the things that were out there that were available to build for the State's Attorney's building. There's a couple other things that we can look at that may or may not be timely. The Nettie Basin property, of course, is about 50,000 square foot footprint. If we need 12.5 for the building, we have plenty of room for parking. The demolition of that should take about 30 days. We entered into a contract with the company back on December 6th to go ahead and demolish it. Nothing's happened yet. We did sell out all the property, I think, on the 12th of December or somewhere around there. We sold what was left that we need to get rid of, so that building is available. I think that would give a builder 8 or 9 months to get it done. There's another piece of property I was waiting on talking to a bank about that owns it, the old Albritton's building there on the corner of 90 and Houston Street. It's on 1.15 acres. The building itself is a little over 17,000 square feet. So Fayette County Bank would sell it to us for $350,000. There's utilities already there. And then, of course, we didn't discuss in length the Suwannee Health and Fitness building, but that's 30,000 square feet. There's a lot of room for growth in that building. And if you use the first floor for 12.5 for the State's Attorney, there's still around 3,000 to 4,000 square feet of storage that we might need, and then 15,000 square feet upstairs. So I just want to bring these things forward to everybody to think about, not to make a decision on, but that there are options out there that we need to look at and consider.
Do you want to put a price on the Suwannee Health and Fitness?
Suwannee Health and Fitness, we have what we were given in the prior meeting, what they would sell it for. So I don't know what the best price would be on that. That was our offer. But I was just looking at per square foot, and that's probably per square foot the best price we have, because it's 30,000 square feet already in under one roof. So if you look at just pure square footage of buildings, that's probably the best one right there. But I just wanted everybody to think, just have a little bit more to think about. That's all I've got.
I've been leaning towards Nettie Basin building, and I did a rough draft on how I thought it could be laid out. I measured the lot, and the lot directly behind it is
looked at some sites and, after long thought and thinking, I actually thought about this native Asian building, which we currently own, and all this parking area. And I didn't check into the corner lot, old female building over there that was purchased, and we had this whole lot that we could probably, rearrange some things that we could work out. And the Genealogy Society, that building there, they could house them in another building temporarily until we get somewhere to locate that. Now we have the opportunity to use that old native Asian space, all this room by the quarterback club room and on the front, that's from the jail. And also, as Commissioner Gamble said, when they wash the cars, that we could probably use some of that space to park in there.
Well, I think that, after some careful thought and consideration on mine over the weekend, the last week, I feel like we could have, in previous rules, could have addressed this at any time, this issue, because it was there. It was an pending thing. So I don't really feel like we're under any time crunch, because it's just business as usual. There's no planning, it's just reactionary. So we can just react and build another structure without planning and foresight and vision, or we can continue to pay rent for another year or two until we get some sort of vision. Because that's the way we've operated from prior to this. Unfortunately, it seems like whenever we have a time crunch or something, that's when we make decisions. And I'm not going to support that anymore. A $68 million company, $67 million company, however you look at that operating. So we have to ask ourselves, do we want to continue to be reactionary and try to shoehorn in another building somewhere, or do we want to be visionary? Reactionary organization like planning and vision, and we're on the defense all the time. We isolate ourselves into one corner, not building an offense to hedge against the competitive winners in the future. Only a predictable competitor who is easily beaten. The nexus is the central most important point or place. In order to get there, we need to be connected. We need to figure out a plan. We need to set it in motion. So currently, we're not linking it. We're not all on the same thing. I forwarded you, gentlemen, a little picture. It says managing complex change. I don't know if you guys had a chance to review it. It's something that I've used in the past. And it says if you lack vision out of the 5 things, which is vision, skills, incentives, resources, and action plans, equals confusion. And the other one that I thought was appropriate in this was the action plan. If you have vision, you have skills, you have incentives and resources, it equals false starts. So I think what we have here is confusion and false starts. So until we address the issue of what we want to do as a governmental center, I'm prepared to renegotiate the lease as it stands in the current building. Sure, it's a waste of money, but we've been wasting money for years. So, Commissioner Wayne.
I'll submit to you that there's no confusion on my part. And I'll go a little further to say that, although we didn't bring it to the public because we were trying to make sure that we were working with the state attorney in every possible way say that we need to move out of that building. I don't wanna move out of town. I wanna keep this operation in town, within the city limits, and I think it'll still be productive, from all aspects. But I do know that the current situation that we're in, has been and continues to be a lost cause. And it was just by virtue that we had a state attorney that was, willing to even discuss with us, the situation that we knew very well we were in, and that we disliked. And so, not to put any pressure on the, or any throwback on the state attorney, he didn't ask us for a new building. We asked him if we could get him out of there. And he was willing to discuss it with us, and so here we are today. I think we just need to look at the options that we have. The only concern that I had was going back to the Nettie Mason discussion. The only thing that I had in concern with that particular location, or this particular location, I wasn't sure about how would we be affected, 20 years from now as far as expanding that facility. It's kind of tight. So that was my only concern with looking at that.
Well, I thought about that too, and not only alternative to that was to look at this
we had a decision. Now, I don't think we would. I don't think that anybody, the logistics of that are phenomenal. But yet, that could occur.
It's not a concern of mine.
Not a concern of mine. I think under the statute, we're obligated to provide him space that meets his needs. And I think if we're doing that like any other officer, constitutional officer, wanting to provide those space, that is dictated to us by statute, that they're pretty much stuck there. I think the only concern, if I could really put my thumb down on one, would be that new state's attorney comes in and decides he wanted to utilize that building, but he wanted to relocate the headquarters. I think that would be more of a realistic option than leaving that building. But I don't really have a concern of that, being that we are centrally located within that district. And it's kind of been the seat of it for my lifetime.
Well, I'll give you some more food for thought. We're talking about list of current apartment buildings inside the downtown area and a list of buildings outside the downtown area. For the purposes of planning, I think that this building, this discussion, it should be a takeoff, discussing what we want to do for government center. The issue about vacating downtown and creating a vacuum and swooshing sound downtown will die. I was convinced it's our own fact, not based on data and substantial evidence. So if you this is a list of current apartment buildings inside the downtown area. We have the property appraiser, tax collector, supervisor of elections, building department, veteran services, address and 911, judicial branch of government, which would include the state's attorney's office, public defender, and clerk of court, and the sheriff's administrative offices, custodial department, and the department. But then when you look at the list of departmental buildings outside of the downtown area, you've got Board of County Commissioners Administration, Public Works Shop and Office, Facilities Maintenance, Clerk Finance, Public Safety Administration, Health Department, Suwannee River Economic Council, Sheriff's Department, Investigative Unit, Solid Waste Offices, Parks and Recreation, Economic Development, IFAS Extension, Emergency Management, and Library Administration. All of these departments could be located in a governmental center without any impact on downtown. Now, keep in mind, in this plan that I'm talking about, nothing that would be implemented right now would be later on down the road. So I think that it's appropriate to have this conversation. And haste makes waste. Continue, Commissioner Gamble, you give us another drawing.
And that's just drawings on what I was talking about. One of them is the center, just laying out some of those wings. And the other one represents just the downtown area, demonstrating how we currently have a campus and location of each office.
All right, get that.
But I will say, several of those departments that you just mentioned, to me, they don't really have any business within a governmental complex. Library administration, they need to be a library. Fire chief needs to be a fire department. Rec department needs to be a rec field. I don't want to take every department that we are over and consolidate them into one spot. Let's just take, you got all your government agencies, every department you're over located within 100 acres. Tropical storm Debbie hits and we buy land in a hole, which sometimes county Tennessee, and it floods. But now we've shut down our entire operation. And I'd rather those departments that you just mentioned be spread out, where they're actually overseeing what's going on at each department.
There's just one fundamental flaw that you're neglecting, and that's growth. Library administration could, at some point in time, decide that they either want to vacate that building or they need space over there, so they need a new building. Some of these departments could be placed in one building. You're thinking about Tropical Storm Debbie, typically these buildings are built to withstand these types of.
I just bring that up to show you
any government operate like that.
How in one spot you open yourself up to everything being shut down at one time.
So, one-stop shop, no, that's not something that,
I'm just like her thinking at one stop shop. I've never needed to go to tax collector, the library, the fire department, and the rec field at one time.
yeah, we are, the board is discussing, I typically let the board, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say something really quick, because y'all kind of brought this up. My name's Kathy McGinn. My husband and I own Be Posh, and you guys serve in the center of downtown. Just for the record, and of course I've talked with a couple of the board members, I just want to say on a personal note for the record, I definitely, the few things that I have brought to attention from my concerns have absolutely nothing to do with the state attorney's office needing a new location, as I would definitely agree with those issues, and that's something that the immediate attention needs to be, and that you have a challenge upon you, and respect that as a board, that y'all do need to make a decision there. The only part that I would bring up as a retailer in town, for those that have worked with me in the last couple of years, longer than that, but primarily the last couple of years, is I am dedicated to not downtown and not the county. I'm dedicated to our community as a whole. I want to see growth at our interstate. I want to see growth in our downtown. And we have to work together as a team to make that happen. I think that we need to make sure that everything happens in perfect timing, because your city basically needs your county. Your downtown needs your county. But at the same time, your county needs your downtown. So when we bring all this business into the county, which I commend you as a board to do, that you're doing wonderful works and efforts with that. I think we all are, and I think we all want the same things. I want to be there downtown when you bring those businesses in, so that they can drive into our downtown and that they can be proud of what they see when they get there. You talk about, wanting to be on the forefront of movement and change and all of that, and I agree with that, Mr. Chairman. I agree with all of that. I think that my store is an example of what we are collectively all about. I wanted people to be proud of Live Oak. I wanted them to drive through the center of our town and have something that they can look at and be proud that it came from Live Oak. So yes, I agree with the growth outside in the county. I agree with the growth within the town, but we have to do that together. My concern as a retailer, obviously, is that and I understand what you're saying is a vision, and I totally am on board with that. I'm just pleading to the board to make a decision that would take into consideration the efforts that are already being made in place, so that we can be here, so that when you bring those big businesses into town and they relocate their families and they drive into the center of Live Oak, they're just as proud, because it's not a vacant, empty hull there that shows no activity, no growth, and looks like we are just nothing anymore. I don't want that. I don't think that one can be without the other. I want growth around the interstate to grow and prosper, and I think you have great visions there. I'm just pleading with the board that as you make those decisions, make sure that it's at a time that the growth that's already started in our downtown, it goes hand in hand. Let's be a team. I want to be a team player. I want to work with you, and I want you to be considerate of me. And just know that together we can make something great happen. We need each other, and we need to be respectful of each other's needs too. And so I just ask that as you make your decisions, I know it's a challenge, but please just remember that those downtown businesses are a staple of this community, and as people come into our town, we need to be there, and I want it to fill up. I want everything to be a wonderful, I know Dr. Jackson has a great vision. He knows me, he's worked with me, and knows that I'm coming from the heart. I have nothing else other than I am passionate about something great coming here. Sure, I could have put a retail store in that downtown and not put near the efforts that was placed in that. But I did that because I wanted every one of you, and anybody that drove through this town to say, wow, that's in Live Oak, something that we can all be proud of. And I am proud of it. And so that's just my plea to you, to just be considerate of the fact. I know you have a decision to make, and I respect that. But just please, as you go through your challenging jobs, and you all have one, that you just keep in mind that there are those of us that we are on board with growth. And obviously we are, and we just want you to keep us in your thoughts as you go through those decisions. Thank you.
After that testimony was 10:30, we're going to take about a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 10:40. 10:42.
They cook us up.
Find some mobile classroom or whatever. That's your hand. I think they all got it.
All right, we got one commissioner.
Sanford, what?
Hey, man.
Sanford, you taking off the page? That little file right there by the yellow thing.
Oh, my God.
I thought he was bringing them. I thought he was.
Throw them out on our
I thought
grass
he was
over
bringing
here.
them.
Spread them out here in our
Yeah,
yard.
Right.
yeah.
I thought he was bringing them. I probably put them on mine.
No. The graders bring them up from Brantford, and they just keep coming this way. Mine got some grader.
There's pipeline on the front of my yard. Bringing the sand first from Brandon.
Next time, tell them, let's use it for, control runoff. It grows fast, anyway.
So the next workshop, we'll discuss the same thing. How we mow, no,
Right.
we're good there, we don't mow the flower. Good. All right, gentlemen, so we've got some proposals here in front of us regarding the state's attorney's office, and of course, we're talking about capital improvement plan, where we want to go from here. I guess we need to give staff some direction as to what we need. There are multiple options out there.
I've got two on my notes.
Go ahead.
A is build it here on the Nettie Basin property. B, from the dollar analysis, is look at the lot purchase from Overlook and the building to build by, Luke McGinnis.
That's your two options. You'd like-
Yeah, and obviously if we build on the lot right here, then it'd be Luke McGinnis.
Right.
He had the best building price. That's kind of the two that I've been looking at. Well, my only hesitation in that is we need to look at the timeline. I don't know when they're planning on, I know we've awarded it to get demoed, but I don't know if it would, we need to make sure it fits in the timeline, and I don't want to be held over a barrel with
What's the
say it's going to take 8 to 9 months to get it all finished, ready to start moving. Let me point out a couple of things. I really don't even want to talk. I'd rather listen. Just say, y'all fill in the blank, and I'm a facilitator. I said that before. That's all I want to be. I don't want to make the decisions that y'all have to struggle with, okay? So, I know, but so far, we started out with the capital improvement plan, and then we narrowed it down to the state attorney's plan, and we did the RFP, and we have information. And now we've got other proposals that may be great proposals. But as you are trying to determine exactly what you're going to do, I think it might also be helpful to answer this question for yourself. How are you going to manage expansion in the future? This sheet was simply to provide you some square footages to show you what it's going to take to expand in the future. If you have to, it incorporates the parking lot, it incorporates the building. I don't have definitive numbers on the setbacks, requirements for setbacks, but it gives you a pretty good guide for what's going to be required for the building and the parking and the setbacks. It's going to be at 1.75 acres, may be conservative, but it's going to be 1.75 to 2 acres. And that's the short range need. And if you look at long range need, if we grow economically in the county, does put pressure on all of your constitutional offices in the space that they have for service to the public. Then you'll need to contemplate what you're going to do when you need to expand, and do you have an adequate space to do it. So I would just ask the board to consider, are you trying to meet a short-range need? Are you trying to meet a long-range need? Are you trying to accommodate both? That's just something you need to think about. So if you want to go with Nettie Bayston, give me the word, and I'll start working with engineers to try to lay the thing out for a footprint. I would say that unless you're going to be able to buy additional land, that will be a short-range plan. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. That's what staff will set out to do. And if you have any doubts about that, we can have the engineers put the square footages on paper and show it to you. But again, if there's other land available in the immediate area, and that's what you want to do, and that's what you want to have in this immediate area, then I think there's sufficient land here, if you can obtain it, to make it a long-range plan for the state attorney.
I like this area. I mean, over the weekend I had the opportunity to really look at it, and by this way, it would, I think everybody would be pleased with what we have. You know, it would actually make this area look a whole lot better than what it does. The lady from B-Posh, she got us talking, and when people come by her store, they may say, "Oh, look, they have a very nice facility downtown." The old building and bad parking spaces, it would enhance downtown, and it would also, I don't think that the state's attorney, with the long-range plan, I don't think that it would be, their building necessarily it would fall in that category that, that as the county grows, that they would need more space. I don't think it would. But if we're going with a long-range plan, also buy additional property in addition to what we're trying to get accomplished right for the state attorney. So that would be my plan A, this location with additional other areas.
Talking about growth, let's just say we look right here, ground zero. I'll make a prediction. It may not happen anytime soon, but just like many other counties and many other places, things have moved out of town. Sheriff's departments have moved out of town. Jails have moved out of town. We've got a lot of land right over there. Football venues get bigger and get moved out of town. look over that property right there, there's lots of room for expansion right here next door. You know, in the future, as growth happens, the Suwannee Bulldogs may need a better venue. I mean, may need to move from where they're at. So there's a lot of room to grow right around here, and in the future, you're gonna see the jail move, and you're gonna see the stadium move. It's gonna happen, I know it will. And so there's room for growth right there. I've seen parking garages go over retention areas. We got a big retention area right there. You could structurally build a parking garage over that hole over there in the ground where the ducks are. I mean, I've seen things like that, so if we need room for parking. So we've got room right here, and I think the initial step, using property we already have, is Nettie Basin, and I think it's a viable alternative.
That's what I was saying, the Missouri building, all of that, that would give us like
Extra room.
I called the Snyder for the meeting, spoke to Paul. He said that he would be, they didn't want to go through all three of them last time. But they would negotiate around, bring it back. So, that, if you guys want to, it's something like that, do that. They made it very clear they want to use them one and done, they want to get beat up on politics. Well, they would want us to pay for it, so we would. Well, I would submit that if we're arguing over downtown, it's like a downtown thing, it's an argument to stay where we are, blah, blah, blah. You know, we can look at Columbia County and see that the investment that they made in that building down there has not considerably made a difference. We're arguing from a monetary standpoint, there may be some short-term gains from that. But if we continue to look for those, for example, public works, not necessarily supposed to be on the airport property, it's there. But we could foresee in the near future that we want to relocate that, relocate administration. Then we're caught into building another building, and trying to shoehorn it in here in downtown. And I, for one, don't want to put pressure on anybody like the school board or anything like that to move the football stadium or something like that. I don't see that occurring. That's hallowed ground.
I don't see us putting pressure on the school board.
No, we're not gonna be pressured now.
But you may need to if you're gonna stay.
I'm not saying make a move, I'm saying in the future, it's gonna happen.
No, another board may say, well, look, you know, we gotta expand, either this or that, and then you say, well, where do we build at? Well, then we're gonna go buy another piece of property, and we could have already bought a piece of property for future expansion. I gave you a list of buildings that are currently outside of the downtown area, like, say, for example, I know Catherine Allen said that she's cruncher station, so we may at some point in time decide, because agriculture is part of our economic development plan, one of the industries that we court, it would be silly not to utilize that and grow that extension office.
They wouldn't move, all you do is just be pouring off a commission hall.
I'm not saying that I'm saying we need to pick a location, and create the area so we don't have to get, so that future boards don't have to go through this. talking about population growth, we're growing above Florida's national average, 1.6%. That's 643 new residents per year. Over a course of 1 year, that's not that many people. We probably facilitate that under our current square footage. But if you multiply that by 10 years, that's 6,400 new residents. So now can you facilitate these governmental needs of 6,400 residents? And if you project that on out to 20 years, that's 12,000 plus new residents, almost 13,000. So there is a formula out there, and I have not found it yet, but I don't know, it's all based on statistics. And those of you who do statistics know that there's a range, there's not a right answer. But there's a square footage per resident of governmental space that's out there to help local governments project their needs. And I don't know what that is. Maybe 10 by 10 square feet per resident. I'm not sure. But yes, I have looked at this. I have looked at where growth is going to occur and where we can help facilitate that growth. Government is not the answer to the private sector. And their expansion are not lacking. Industrial jobs are, and we've been very good at that. And the downtown will grow more above median income that we have here. We're working hard on that. So I feel with the efforts of people downtown and increase the work that we've done with regard to industrial development downtown, will continue with or without. So, Commissioner Lane, I think
The way I look at this, right now, we've got one shot to get this right. We've already discussed before that we're not changing the budget. We're not impacting the budget. We're gonna use the dollars that we already pay and lease, in addition to the lease payments made by, the partnering counties. That's going to fund whatever we do. So it's not gonna be able to come back in a year or two and say, well, we need to buy this or buy that. We've got an opportunity to utilize and the funding that's already available to take care of what we wanna look at. So there's, the way I've kind of, in my mind, I've kind of categorized it as, number one is feasibility. This is on top of, getting right off the bat the budget, but going beyond that is feasibility, time. That's the number one thing. The second thing is the growth. Obviously, that's a limiting factor for us. We've got to make sure that what we're looking at long term and making sure we get this right is that we accommodate without question and supposition that we're gonna be able to accommodate and make sure that we cover growth. Now, we all keep hitting on the community aspect of it. I don't care where it's placed within the city limits, it's going to, it's gonna benefit the city. So I don't have any issues with all of what we've already looked at. Everything was pretty much within the city limits, and that's fine. So going back to the budgetary impact and how we need to do this. I don't know how to say it other than the fact that, basically I already said it. We've got one shot to make this right and cover all aspects of our concerns. Because we can't go and increase taxes to fund debt service that we've already got right now. So there's nothing else that we can play. We're where we are at, we can't do anything other than utilize the funding that's available. So everything that we had already looked at or was presented to us, based on the dollars, based on the location, fits in the whole plan. We just need to decide the more I think about the Nettie Bays, and my concern is long-term. It's gonna fit short-term with no problem. So I'm kind of reluctant, if I'm gonna weed out any, I'm already starting in my mind, I'm starting to weed out Nettie Basin because 20 years from now, it's not gonna be big enough, and now we're already talking about, well, we're trying to go buy this or buy that to make it work. So I'm just gonna go ahead right off the bat, and I'm gonna eliminate that in my mind. back to what I initially proposed, is that we look at that particular lot to buy and build a building on it, and we still come out dollar-wise less than, the only other option was the gym. But dollar-wise, the new lot, a new building is better. Now, obviously, it's double the space, but I'm just factoring in the dollars per square foot. So, from a cost standpoint, the option of buying the lot and building the building is better. But then down the road, if y'all wanna look at something as far as other building demands or other needs, then again, we're gonna be back to where we are today and looking at, okay, we need to buy this, or we need to buy that, or whatever. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. I don't wanna.
Let me speak to the budgetary impact. We have a loan of $2 million. If we did do the lot out there, that'd be 1.2. That leaves 800,000 plus or minus dollars, which we said that the budgetary impact over paying for the $2 million would be taken up by the essentially the lease. Listen, I'm gonna bring up some other. If we decided to do something here in Nettie Bays, then you've already allocated the 100,000 for the demolition, so that's already paid for. That leaves the construction of the building, 988,000. Of course, that leaves another $1 million out there for potential planning purposes for future growth. So the finances are there to make a move. And you're absolutely right. We're at a critical point. We have to get this right, and that's what I'm.
My only concern with this parcel next door to us is just the simple fact that it's not gonna meet our long-term needs. We're gonna be looking to do something else 10, 15 years from now. Like you just brought up, you're looking at, between the building and the land, you're looking at about $1.2 million, with the lot and the building. And I keep saying that separate for the public's sake, there's two different proposals there, combined into one, and anyway.
One question, the state attorney maybe will ask. The Lafayette County and Hamilton County, do they currently have an office in that county, or are they represented here?
No, sir. You want to speak?
Yes.
I guess my question is, if we're looking 20 years out, why is it automatically assumed that the growth or expansion of that office has to be in Suwannee County if those two counties do not have representation office in their county now?
I mean, obviously, that's the unique part of my circuit. Every circuit, and I may have said this at your official meeting, every circuit in the state of Florida, with the exception of Monroe, which is its own circuit, has a large anchor county. And so they basically, with their ad valorem revenue, pay the state attorney's overhead, and there's probably some fee collection from Union County, but they have an office provided, and basically Gainesville writes the checks for all of the surrounding counties. There's been the question of leaving under, the next state attorney or me or whatever. That's the unique problem of it, is there's no room in the courthouse and say, let's just use Lafayette County. There's no room for an office. I mean, and if there was, the county nor the state attorney can currently afford to man an office, unless we had like office hours. If I said, come every Tuesday, there'll be someone here to meet with you. It requires phones, it requires support staff, and so one attorney, I have one attorney assigned to the entire county and half of a legal assistant. So I would say in my lifetime, there probably will never be a state attorney's office built or provided by the citizens of Lafayette County. It's just the reality of the ad valorem and population of my smallest county. Jasper, same sort of thing. In all of these counties, we used to have space in the courthouse, but that was when there were part-time assistants, and the total number of attorneys in the state attorney's office was probably less than 10. Was probably less than 10 for the circuit. I now currently have almost 70 employees, and I am the largest law office between Tallahassee, Gainesville, and Jacksonville. There are no private, government, or any other firms approaching the size of my agency. And as to the leaving, I think, yes, the headquarters could be moved, but it'd be a political nightmare for somebody to do that. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And secondly, this is still going to be the center of, I mean, unless you're just going to completely write off Lafayette, Hamilton, Madison, and Suwannee County and up and move to, say, Lake City. Lake City will be happy, but they don't amount to over half of the population of this circuit. It would probably be it'd be a short-term solution for that state attorney. I can assure you, and I've thought about George Bush or George H.W. Bush, or read my lips, this should be the center of the circuit as long as we exist. The headquarters issue, I can't speak for another state attorney. I think y'all win an Article 5 fight, though. You provide an adequate building that's not unsafe, condemned, mold infested. I'm trying to qualify as a lawyer all the things I can think of that would make it uninhabitable. But, and I only say this, it's not direct, it's because it's directly relevant. I have the opposite fight in Perry right now. We have 40% of the size we should have. I have people literally sitting on at desk. My investigator sits at a desk that's smaller than the top of this podium. And he sits on a little rolling chair in the hallway when he's there. If you're on PTI in Taylor County, you're going to meet my person in the hallway. If you want to meet the state attorney, I will have to find a courtroom. I have 4 or 5 attorneys and about 4, we've doubled the size of the office, but we're still in the courthouse. Why? Because that's paid for by the county. The minute I use Article 5 and sign a lease, I can do it, but the minute I hand the county a $50,000 lease, they're going to have to pay it, and the people of Taylor County are going to know that the state attorney just cost them another indefinite number of millions of dollars to exercise Article 5. So I have been trying to work with them not to create the situation that was created here. And in fairness to every state attorney and every county commission board that has preceded me, I don't think I don't think anybody intentionally said, hey, let's move into this building, it's a great location, we've outgrown the courthouse and the space that we used to exist, and it's right across the street. You know, it's very convenient. That was probably a good move practically. Then when Article 5 came in is where I think the hiccup was. Nobody said, hey, we're going to be paying some private entity forever for a building. Because 3 years ago when I stood in front of this body, and that's when the issue of the lease first came up, I started looking, but I realized if I tried to get a private entity to build a building, I was basically doing the same thing, and then I would subject myself to ethical arguments that I was enriching friends or people that were powerful. So I kept it close to my vest, and me and my administrative staff looked at buildings, but we didn't call realtors just because we didn't want the government price of everything empty in town to go up. You know, I have land right now I'd give you tomorrow. The problem is that you'd have to buy another piece of land, and I would have the same issue. I'm sure that would be a $100,000 piece of land for you. So, you know, I just need a solution, and I just don't like what I'm looking at for the history of this lease. And we're pushing $4 million. And I don't second guess, and that's what my point is. It's inertia. I mean, Jerry Blair got to the end of his term of 32 years, and his lease ran out. And instead of leaving his successor that problem, he signed a year extension, which was good business on his part, and left it to the next state attorney to decide what was best for him. And then that was a negotiation. And as long as we're always getting to the end of the lease, I don't fault the investment company in California, but they own us. I mean, I have 50 people across the street, and the nightmare of temporarily, when we have a disaster recovery plan, I mean, if that building ever became uninhabitable, you're talking about a nightmare. We can move our computers, but I now have people that have to get to court, that have to communicate, and I envision being in some school cafeteria with, you know, people being very miserable on a temporary basis. And I understand the long-term plans, I totally do. I will leave you with this anecdote. I was in the planning, I was part of the state attorney's office when they planned the 10-year courthouse in Columbia County. Beautiful building. And the design was we were going to move in 2000, and there was going to be 10 years worth of expansion. The entire fourth floor was dedicated to the state attorney's office, with unfinished offices on about a third of it. When it was moved in, the court administration had occupied all of the space that was supposed to be for state attorney expansion, and some other offices moved in. That courthouse was full the day we moved in, even though it was planned for a 10-year, growth spurt. There is no room for me to move over there. Luckily, I don't envision needing 5 or 6 more people in Lake City in the near future. And the county is, of course, paying the courthouse cost, or has already paid for it with ad valorem revenue. But I've never asked for a specific building. I've just asked for a solution, and obviously it involves y'all. And I don't like the solution of me solving it, where I just go sign a lease. And not that it's in any way a building that would fit our needs, but I drive by a giant vacant old, the Pick and Save building. It's 45,000 square feet. Could have bought it for $500,000. It does not. It would be terrible for my needs, but in my mind, I'm thinking 4 years worth of lease payments, I could have bought it. The problem is Article 5 doesn't allow Jeff Sigmeister to own anything, or the state attorney's office to own anything. And that's why I approached the board, because y'all have got to own it or keep paying rent.
My question, how long have you been with the state attorney office?
I've been there 3 years. I mean, I was hired 20 years ago. Well,
You've been there 20 years.
well, I've been in this community for 20 years.
But my question is, and I know it's a fair question to you, in 20 years, you envision if this was implemented with this size of current, if it's built, would it outgrow its needs?
That building?
Not one, this building.
And you're talking about if you build a building that, I think I saw the plans, or the estimates like 14,000 square foot building? 13,000. And let me, just for y'all's satisfaction, I can't answer that question only because I deal with the local level. And I'll be frank, I did not think that when I got elected I was going to have to deal with building issues. They are important. I mean, I'm the head of the office. I should worry about my staff and serving the public. But I have spent a lot of time looking at buildings and negotiating with county, not just this board, but other county commissions, trying to solve my space needs. I don't think in 10 years that a 13,000 square foot, because we're able to adapt somewhat. Right now, we still have file space we need. In 10 years, we shouldn't have a physical file. We're going paperless, where everything's on computers, and we have disaster recovery backups and stuff like that. But we still have old files. And until they either come back to court or they get purged by statute, we do still store some physical things. So our space needs will probably, sometimes we might hire an extra person, have to find some place for them to stay. But by the same token, our assignment's probably not going to change drastically. And it's not an issue of the size, it's an issue of the mandate of the legislation. I go to Tallahassee and they tell me that we're putting too many people in prison, so maybe they'll start repealing some laws. Okay? I mean, that's honestly, that's why I don't go to Tallahassee anymore, because they tell me that we incarcerate too many people, and I'm never passed a legislative, criminal law in my life. So I can't, there's a lot of variables, and I can't say that it would be too small. I did talk with Mr. Harris about that, kick out a wall. I mean, there are ways to expand that are doable besides moving functions from Live Oak.
Who would make the call in regards to, say, another county that you serve, you represent, wanted some space? Would they come to you and go, look, we want to give you some space? Or would that be something that you go to them and say, look, I need some space over here?
It would require them, but I have some say-so, because I go to the county and say, give me space, they do, and then I can't afford, because they don't pay my staff. So they provide me an office with a reception area and the furniture, and it's all nice, and then I can't afford somebody to be there full-time, and that's probably not going to last real long. The county commissions, after so long, are going to say, we provided you space, and you're not providing services to the county. In fact, we do have one single office, kind of like the mirror of the court chambers, behind the courtroom in Madison. It is, I have a key to it, it's the state attorney's office. We have a computer and a printer there. But we don't man it because, for the same reasons. There's no outer room, you just walk up right into whoever's working in there. So it is a workspace because I don't have, it's at least a half hour to an hour from any of my staffed offices to that location.
Anybody have anything else?
Would you say that the 13,000 square feet you occupy right now is laid out in the most efficient manner for you?
No, sir, and that's why if we had a third, and I realize it never came to fruition, but, we looked at other buildings, and I would remind y'all that I'm trying to be mindful of all the other county constitutional officers, and I learned that in Taylor. Their solution was to provide me space occupied by another constitutional officer that still occupies that space 3 years later. And I'm not more powerful, nor am I going to kick them out. And so, everybody has their own territory. I just want space.
No, I'm just saying that this building over here,
It could be laid out a little, it's a bank building. So it's got, the offices will be a little bit smaller. There won't be double walkways when we don't need them. I did sit down with my administrative staff and Mr. Harris to make sure the basic needs of design are met. So we had a secure parking lot so the taxpayers don't have to pay people to commute because I have fleet cars they can check out if they can secure their own vehicle. So those are things that I asked for just to save, on the operation expense of, and to design a server room. We're computer-based. We need a server room that's state-of-the-art so that, and it generates a lot of heat. So there are things that in design I think we can cover our problems. And I do not, I can't predict the future. I just don't see the size building that we're talking about being a problem in the near future. And hopefully and I don't want to just leave the problem for someone else, but I'd like to be state attorney for a few terms. And I don't want to create a problem that I'm having to come back and y'all will all be retired and sitting out in the audience and saying, we gave the guy a building and now he's back up here saying it's not big enough. And my intentions is an adequate space that doesn't bankrupt the county. Yes, sir. No, you don't. You have no obligation, in fact, but y'all have the boon. And that was one of the 4 criteria when I met with the county manager when I started asking seriously about help, was I didn't want to one day stand, because you are going to get assessments. Right now, you pay about 50% of my overhead because of the way the breakdown is. And Lafayette and Madison and Hamilton don't provide space, so they pitch into the first 20% and then pitch in again to the 80%, which is where Suwannee County gets hit. Sure, they could say, Jeff, we're going to build you a building that houses all your people. That is entirely a possibility. And I don't know what I would do then. I'd probably work with the county. It's not my desire to relocate. I moved here for a reason. Last thing I want to do is go to a different county I don't live in if I live in the one that the main headquarters is. No, sir. No, sir. And I guess if they provided office, say they expanded the Lafayette County Courthouse and said, here, Jeff, here's your state attorney's office. We're tired of paying our pro rata share. It may hurt the recovery from Suwannee County, but it wouldn't hurt y'all's obligation to provide space for me. And so the reality is the minute y'all build a building and the debt's retired, they're still going to be assessed by you the cost of upkeep. So essentially, although you'll never make a profit, the smaller counties have to pay part of my overhead since they're not providing space. So Suwannee County will actually at some point start recovering. Over the next years they will, but they'll also still keep recovering an assessment from those counties that are served, all 7 of them, including Suwannee County, even when y'all don't have a debt anymore. Because there's still phone lines, janitorial, electrical, so there'll be an expense to run the building. And they could provide space. But right now, they're going to be paying y'all a check. I mean, I think it's Mr. Sanders or maybe it's Mr. Godwin, but the clerks pull their money in the circuit, and we submit our bills and they write a check, but it's all the counties submitting their assessments.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
I want to make a couple of comments. Actually, I was sitting with Commissioner Fleming out here looking at this other adjacent property the end of last week, and I just want to share what I told him at the time, and I still am convinced of this. I think long-term on this other property back here, you're going to find that there's going to be pressure at some time in the future with growth to place additional courthouse services somewhere, and the associated parking. And I wouldn't rule out that possibility for this other property if the county ended up purchasing it back over to the corner of Mizell property. There were plans at one time to just add on to the back of the courthouse. I've seen those plans. But then there were sinkholes and other issues associated with that. So if you're going to try to think long-term, think of any other services you might also have to place in this immediate area. There's a far less chance that you're going to relocate all of your court services to another location. So I'd keep that in mind. You may have to grow those in the immediate area. The issue of growth, I just want to make an interesting comment about that. I have one of these in my office from Marion County, but I wasn't about to bring it to the board meeting because I've been ridiculed for trying to suggest too many things that we did in Marion County. So, Dr. Jackson, I appreciate you bringing this. But I was there in Marion County when we created the very first capital improvement plan that took me to this. But I was also in Marion County years ago when it looked a lot like Suwannee County from a population standpoint and from an old downtown standpoint. And everything, all commerce was around the town square. The courthouse was on the town square. There were no businesses anywhere in the county, really, except on the town square. And it changed over time, and it grew. If you want to know what Florida's going to look like in 50 years, just study California. Unfortunately, because of our climate, they will come. But we're going to grow. When I served as a county commissioner in Marion County, I was only there for 12 years. But we enlarged every single government building there was to try to accommodate growth, and in some cases doubled them in a 12-year time frame. Why? Because growth came. Was it industrial development? No, it was combinations of lots of things, but not the least of which was retirement communities. And I enjoy driving Highway 27 when I go south. And if you drive Highway 27, you can see that those communities are coming this way. Residential development is now traveling up Highway 27. It's in Newberry, and it's in other communities right now. And it's coming here. And when it gets here, it's going to grow exponentially. I mean, once it starts, you talk about inertia, it takes off. And you have to accommodate all those needs. One thing I wanted to say about the location of government services in relationship to growth. I'm not convinced that you have to move your services where that growth occurs necessarily. The campus that exists in Marion County does not house all of the government buildings, but it has a significant number of them. Particularly growth management is there, county administration, county commissioners, and lots of other services. But the growth that occurred is actually 10, 12, 15, 20 miles away in Marion County. And people drive over, building contractors drive to where they have to obtain the services necessary that are located on that particular campus. So you don't have to put all of those offices where the growth is actually occurring. But I am convinced that one thing that you need to keep in mind is the growth of court services in downtown Live Oak, because you're going to have a terribly difficult time considering trying to move those someplace else. And that may not have helped you at all.
deal with property, I think it would be the same if you don't own that. Utilities would be there. If you went, instead of a single-story building, go with a two-story building. You don't need it right now. But while you're building, today's dollars are cheaper than what they're gonna be if you go to expand in the near future. I don't know how much more another floor would cost to put it in there. But in 4 years, you know that the public defender's lease is up. You're going to have to deal with that at that time or continue to pay money for that building, lease money for that. I mean, have you even considered a second story for possible expansion? I thought about that. That's where that gym is. There's 30,000 feet, a whole upstairs that we don't need right now, but, so, and the only reason that I steered away from that is going back to again, it's everybody's consideration, is the dollars, the now dollars don't match up with what we're looking at doing out there. But if we wanna throw in growth as one of the key determining factors, which it is important in my mind, then to me, that eliminates this, that puts us up there on Overlook with the Luke McGinnis building or at the gymnasium. Randy was talking about the growth. It's kind of hard, unless with zoning and things of that nature, you're in front of growth. You're directing the growth. It's like, again, my analogy of a wet piece of spaghetti. You can't push that spaghetti, but you can get in front and you can pull it and guide it and direct it. He's talking about courthouse growth. You put a two-story on this property that you currently own, and then enter into negotiations with, to purchase, locate budget funds or whatever next year for that particular piece of property. The county doesn't own the rest of the remaining property. School board still has some of it between the quarterback club and genealogy. That's still school board property. So, those are other considerations. I just hate to keep spending more taxpayer dollars when you already have property. Like, you utilize what you have currently, and then start looking at planning for this additional courthouse growth or whatever it might be, and where you could put it and keep the judicial functions closer together, closer to their primary function, which is the courthouse. I mean, that's just my thinking.
Mr. Harris?
I want to comment briefly on two-story construction. There's a huge difference in the cost of commercial people, two-story construction, compared to single-story construction. But on what you have on this spreadsheet that I gave to commissioners, I took two proposals that were submitted to the RFP. The first one was the new building on the vacant piece of land. That vacant piece of land was $140,000. The combination of those two is roughly 1.2. Two-story over here, the gymnasium, is a little over 1.9 million, almost $2 million. But I'll point this out to you. If you took your 1.2, and I'm not suggesting that we would have to completely double the size of that building anytime soon, but just to give you an accurate comparison to the gymnasium, if you took $1 million for an additional building and added your 1.2, you're at $2.2 million. Okay, that's to double your square footage. Because the gymnasium would have a completed downstairs only at almost $2 million. In the future, when you needed the upstairs, you would have to renovate it. And I would speculate you're going to spend at least $500,000 to do that. So your cost would be greater on the existing gymnasium over here would be to build another brand-new building. And that price includes the parking and everything. If you were to do it on the property up on the north end of town. That piece of land is 5.6 acres, which is more than adequate to satisfy the need. And it doesn't require that any portion of it be used for stormwater retention because the pond is there. If you're going to, again, I'm just a facilitator. I've created this spreadsheet to help us, put other options down here and then try to reconcile it with any proposed costs. You're going to find that the three land issues that we have, or land that we already own, when you reconcile it with your other needs that you've already all spoken to at one time or another, these other buildings and future accommodations will gobble up this little bit of land that we have right here. Now, which of those services that you've already mentioned that are in the immediate area can be moved away from the immediate area as easily as the state attorney? Or which one of them doesn't have to be here if you're going to maximize the use of the space that you have down here?
On the stormwater, you saying gobble it up, the space, a lot of the space that we have. That retention pond across the road, across the street, that wouldn't be available, you have to have its own retention.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
I have a question. Do you know how much it would take off the tax roll, that 5.6 acres? It's under ours.
I don't know what it's current. I don't know what's current.
Tractor Supply Company's currently paying around $21,000 on the taxes. So if you look at that as potential commercial development down the road, you're taking $20,000+ off the tax roll.
Well, then you eliminate the gym then, leave it alone. Well, going back to what Bo had, and me trying to just make apples to apples, I thought about a two-story sitting here, and it would be no better, no advantage to that over there. That's why I keep going back to that, there at Overlook. It's gonna allow us, there's a lot more property for commercial development, and it'll come. But I just think long-term, when we boil it all back down to it and have that capacity for growth, so that in 10, 15, or 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we're not looking, trying to find additional parking or find up additional property downtown. That's gonna be the spot up there that keeps us from going back to that particular entity. We won't have to go back to the state attorney for 20 years at least, even if we have to do it then.
Yeah, but I think if our main focus is looking 20 years out, the 129 from downtown to Walmart, the interstate, that's your corridor for growth, commercial.
Well, it could be coming this way,
But
but
it could be, but I mean, based on the infrastructure where everything's going right now, it's going that way. If we start developing that for governmental purposes, we're taking that potential land off the tax roll, we're taking it out of circulation, out of our, I mean, one of the things that, Dr. mentioned earlier was inventory. Any of these properties that we use that we don't already own is gonna take away from our inventory. Growth will come, it's coming, there's no doubt about it. You gotta ask,
no, sorry. I think you've got a great point, but I think
what I'm
that,
saying is you have to say, this is our commercial district, do we want right in the middle of our commercial district, one sector of governmental purposes?
well, that's kind of what's going on now over there.
Not there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what downtown's arguing about.
Well, downtown, I can see their point, you have downtown, you have all of the constitutional officers, the courthouse, everything located right here. Over the past 100 years, businesses have developed around this area to meet the needs of certain sectors of the governmental body that's here. Restaurants have popped up. And granted, it's great to look down the road, but we need to have a deeper discussion when we're looking at an actual plan, because I'm afraid that while you pull 40 jobs from across the road, it doesn't sound like that much, but nobody's sitting here could be unintended consequences that we have, like directly just away from this area. This is where I want to keep it. I think Manny Mason is a great location. I mean, we can accommodate the building there, and I believe 20 years out, there is room to expand that building on that piece of property.
I would argue the point with Columbia County, if you look at what they've all located down there, they doubled down with the new courthouse, and they got the hospital, and they got the public library, they got the health department, they got both police and fire there, and down there in Wake.
And if you look around that area, there's more businesses there, and as you're ready to get away from it, it starts to decline.
I've showed 4 buildings over there, that 3 were vacant, and 1 was occupied with a little shop, and huge furniture.
I think from an economic standpoint, though, on a commercial level, that in time is going to eliminate that area being a prospect for us anyway. As that property develops and property prices go up, we're not gonna be able to afford it. Somebody's gonna have a cheaper piece of property somewhere.
Well, that's why you have a plan where you go and you look at your property prices now, your projections in the future, and you actually decide where you need to locate based on today's prices, future prices, population, just needs. I don't want to just, when we went out for these proposals, there was a company claiming that they could build this building on their property cheaper than we can do it. As far as I know, that company didn't even put their paperwork in to be on our list. And it wasn't to make a decision on, it was gonna be so we could have more numbers to look at. And now that's one of our choices. It's not in our, the people knocking us for not having a plan and even moving forward there was not a plan. We're just taking one of the 5 choices we got and move forward.
We can even muddy up the water from everybody. I'm just saying, we got property up there, soccer field.
Oh, I saw that.
I mean,
There's that,
all kind of stuff, I know, I did too.
there's that potential property.
I don't wanna do that just for the sake of, I just don't wanna go there.
Doesn't have a reverter.
Well, I don't wanna go there. That land was donated for a particular reason, and I don't wanna do anything to upset you, even though there wasn't a reverter.
Well, I'll make this one point. When private business goes to look at money, they hedge their bets against things. Buy property when it's low, and sell it when it's high. If you're looking out for the tax rate, buy it when it's low, and if you want to vacate later in life, and later generations, then create growth. It does create growth. But anyways, we'll take a 10-minute break here. 11:50.
Is the public comment over?
No, when we come back, Mr. Tillman wants to speak, I think, you want to speak.
If I can, I'll just say my little piece, and if I can, is that all right?
Can it wait for 10 minutes, or do you need to say now?
No, I have a report.
Come on up.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I'm Charles Thomas, and I don't know if you need an address or not.
We haven't been doing, we have.
Okay. Well, anyhow, I don't have anything real specific to say other than what a lot of other folks have lobbied for. I thought Ricky's comments were good about the businesses developing around the courthouses and doing those things. But just a couple of things. Back when Jerry Scarborough and them got us to approve a 1-cent sales tax to do the jail and to close the landfill and do that, and then we think the court started the jail, and then we've remodeled some of the buildings where the tax collector's office and everything is. And so they have been kind of making a campus plan here in town, in my opinion. And those seem to have worked real well. But when progress comes, like it or not, there's winners and losers. The interstate put all the US 1, all these people out of business for a long time. That's just a way of life. But my point and my plea to you would be that if we can accomplish what we need to without cutting off our legs, or whatever you might say, and continue to keep as much stuff in the city I look at it like this. If it's no harm to the county and a benefit to the city, then it would be a benefit to all taxpayers and everybody to try to do something here, close in, whether it's Nettie Basin or whatever it is. But because before long, one time the post office wanted to move and financial difficulties kept that from happening. So, we'll have no control over the feds when they decide to do that. So that'll be another place that will end up being moved and put somewhere else. So I just think that Commissioner Gamble's thought process of the county, or this, everybody building around to support the county facilities was a good one. And I just wanted to put my opinion out there for what it might be worth. Hopefully the commissioners can come together with something that will continue to be beneficial. And, I would urge the city to, if they are able to do something and use the Nettie Basin property. I saw some of the officials here. I don't know if they're here now or not. But I would urge them to be as cooperative in what they could do as far as permitting processes and all these kinds of things and stuff to assist us in getting it done. And I'm sure as good a negotiator as you are, if we need a little time, that we could get a few months on that lease over there. And that, and I would like to point out that even though the lease payment is somewhat high, it does include all utilities, all taxes. I mean, that's the total cost to us, that $16.88, or even if you got it down to 12 or 14 and you take $4 off for utilities and everything, and if you need to do that for a little while and till we get things put together, I'm sure the county has the ability to get that lease reduced and extended. Thank you. Appreciate your indulgence.
Do we know what that lot will build max capacity? Is it 13, is it 16, is it an 18,000 square foot building? If the building was built here at Nettie Basin, what's the max size of the building that piece of land would hold? I know we're talking 13 right now, but.
It's over 50,000 square feet, so you gotta add parking.
Right.
You got the building and parking and landscape and setbacks.
I was just
Can't
curious.
speak to the setbacks and all, but it might take, we could fit that building on the property. I don't know about the setbacks and everything else, what the impact would be, but it'd be roughly an acre and a half. We've got 50,000 square feet total, so that would not be adequate.
I was just curious if 13 was the max size of that building.
I'm back to my two options. Nettie Basin and McGinnis, or overlooking McGinnis.
You want to just break now for lunch and come back, or we want to go over 11:46?
How much more we gotta discuss? We're not gonna make a decision, are we?
No, but we need to kind of see what the consensus is before.
I just told you what my consensus is. Like I said, it's either overlooking McGinnis or Nettie Basin and McGinnis. That's the only two options I've got.
I'm gonna send both of that.
Same thing.
Does the board have any interest in acquiring the Mizell building? We have that on next agenda. We just want to get appraisal on it.
Appraisal,
Appraisal.
yeah.
Didn't we have one done, Randy, do you remember that? I think we've got one
be about $1,500.
There's also the two properties there, that you have, it's Robinson Bill Bond and also, Wendy's house.
All the corners.
There's the thing also, I think if you check the, agreement that you have at the lot for the, where they're doing the washing, it's where we ended up in front of the board, it's where that, I think that they have an agreement with the school, or the county, they can actually pay that anyway.
I remember that discussion. I was on the backside of that discussion. I remember paving.
What about we want to check with the school board and see what additional property they want to donate to the cause, so to speak.
I think that we've got, I think that if we all agree with these two options, I think that's something that the staff can go back and look at, so when we come back to the meeting next week, we can decide what we're gonna do. Overlooking McGinnis or McGinnis and Nettie Bailey? Well, I think we still need to figure out some feasibility. I do, in my mind. That's why I got the two options. I want to look at some feasibility here between now and June.
I'm just saying, I'm not thrilled with either. That's understood.
Jimmy Norris, 18152 136th Street. I just have a concern, and this is a little bit, appreciate, again, what you guys are doing. I know it's a tough issue. But when this information was set out, obviously it was a little bit muddled, as, you know, there were several options on how all this could be bid out. My concern is, unless there's a set of blueprints out there somewhere that shows this building, is there? So there is no blueprints.
There's a floor,
Just a floor
yes,
plan.
there's a floor plan.
Right, there is a floor plan, but being in the business, I know what a floor plan can do. A floor plan can vary a price by hundreds of thousands of dollars. If there is not a set of engineered drawings, if there is not a set of specifications that's been sent out, then I don't understand how you have any kind of comparable bids on this building that you're looking at building. And I'm concerned about that because I don't want to see the county get in a situation where, I know Wesley kind of keeps mentioning the price of, you know, 900 or whatever that was. I just don't want to see you get in a situation where you start getting a bunch of change orders and things change, and all of a sudden this $900,000 building is now a $1.4 million building, and that happens. So from that standpoint, I wish you guys would kind of keep that in mind also, because you're kind of banking on this building, but that building is not compared to any other structure that I'm aware of that you sent out to bid.
So what is your recommendation at this point?
Well, that you guys do a good job doing this. So. The way it works in my world,
Expert opinion, what should the board do at this point, minus, should we stop the process and get a set of building plans and then?
well, I mean, and I don't want to sit in your shoes, any of you guys. I mean, it's a tough decision. I just worry that, from my experience, that when something is sent out, a lot of times it's not apples to apples. And when you have a floor plan, and we all know from the bids that came in, and I received a copy of that, but I didn't even try to bid it because it was just so wide open. I didn't even know where to go on it. And I know you were doing that a little bit for feelers and stuff to try to see where this may take you. But I just worry that now, even if you do choose a site, that you're not looking at a comparable building. I mean, just because I come up with a price on what I think you may want, and somebody else may come up with their price on what they think you may want. Well, that's not quite fair because you're not bidding on the same structure. You know, you're not bidding on the same project, so.
Taking into consideration the building itself, not the site grant.
Right.
In your opinion, based on your expert opinion, based on the numbers that were received about the building only, the 988,000 was one bid, and then what was the other bid from, was it Kurtz or something like that?
Three, one here's what we did. You want me to speak to the specs?
Building only, the McGinnis was 884.57.
884.57.
And I'm not prepared to speak about other people's pricing. I will not go there.
So what I'm saying is, in your expert opinion, having reviewed the documentation, where are the prices reasonable for the building only realizing the site check as a building contractor?
Are they reasonable? The, yeah.
Lose half of that just in your fixtures.
Just, let me ask you one question.
Yes, sir.
If you were just to build a metal building with a concrete floor, with normal floor plan like this shows, do you have a square foot project?
No, and I don't want to really get into the pricing thing, because that's not why I'm here. Why I'm here is that I'm just concerned that the county, because I'm in this field, so it's not about the building or even trying to build that structure. I just want to be sure you're comparing apples to apples on this structure that you're putting out there, because there were a lot of, it varied greatly, on the pricing. And typically what we see is when there is a building, is I go down and, to whose ever office, and there's a set of blueprints this big that's been engineered and a set of specifications this thick that we received, and we all bid that project. It's just, there are things that can be left open-ended, all the way down to how many coats of paint goes on this wall. Do we know what kind of paint goes on that wall? That's just one example. I'm saying there's a lot of things there, and I'm just worried if you're basing on a building off of the way this was bid, that you may get yourself in a position where it's not really this number you're using as a comparable. It may be a different number. And that's just, I just want you to consider that, is if that is a good number.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying, is now I'm concerned that the numbers aren't accurate.
I don't want to speak to somebody else's number.
Until you have real blueprints.
But you can
Yeah.
go into a project and say, for commercial building space, you can almost, say it's going to be around X amount of dollars for commercial space. You can do that. Mr. Harris, you have a comment?
There are a couple of ways that typically local governments obtain construction contracts. One common method is to do an outright bid where you submit to the streets for advertisement a completed set of construction drawings. The other method that is commonly used is a request for proposal. In the case of this particular proposal, like many counties, is that with a proposal you can entertain proposals that include the architectural and engineering design, which is an expense. You can also include consideration of the specifications that are submitted by the proposer. In our case, we outlined our specification, and we responded to lots of questions, and we sent addendums out as well. So we spoke to doors, and we spoke to windows, and we spoke to floor coverings, what they had to be, and the specifications on the plumbing fixtures and faucets and lots of other things. It has 5 zones for air conditioning. We've got the information on the manufacturers of the equipment. We had a separate unit for the computer server room. We spoke to all these specifications, probably provided more information than would typically be provided in an advertisement or proposal. But I agree with you entirely. They will never be 100% exact when you compare them. So you have to obtain additional information. In our case, what we did after we got those proposals was we requested additional information related to the allowances, because in order to avoid change orders, you have to know what the allowances were by the proposer going in, so that someone can't come back later and say, well, I want to increase or decrease this expense. Well, if you don't have anything to compare it to, then you've lost. So we got that information. I believe we have sufficient information to build the building. In fact, Mr. McGinnis is the one that built this building just a few years ago. He's very familiar with our specifications, our floor covering, our paint, our base moldings, our door. Those are pre-finished doors, same type doors that would be in this building. So there isn't a great deal of mystery involved in that. The greatest mystery is always the site. In this particular case, we didn't know where the site was going to be. We didn't limit those proposers with our advertisement. I had no idea that they would all come back and be either in the city limits or right next to the city limit. In the case of the property that we've spoken about north of town, it would require being annexed into the city limits so that the water and sewer could be connected to. But all of these, none of them were out in the county, in the rural part of the county. All very near, either in the city limits or close to the city limits. But I'm convinced that we have sufficient information and specifications to complete a contract that protects the county, and we end up with a building that's going to be very similar to this.
Mr. Harrison, your expert opinion of the building contract, the numbers that were provided for the building, 980,000, the other one was 1.2 million, are within.
When you take the allowances out, the numbers really, there isn't a huge spread in these numbers. Two of them are closer together than the other one, but I believe that the building contractor can construct the building with the numbers he's provided.
And that's what allows and everything.
Right. And you're going to see in the spreadsheet that we had prepared and given to the commissioners before, you'll see allowances in there that resulted in a lot of those variations in the numbers. For instance, there was one out-of-town contractor that had huge allowances that were far greater than the other two contractors. So you just have to boil all of that down and ensure that you're getting the product that you want at the end.
Further discussion?
I'm just going to say the numbers right here, just for building less allowances, based on 12,500 square feet. Again, this is 70.76. Florida Metal Buildings 83.6, and Kurt's Construction $78. So there's a swing from $70 to almost 71 to 83. So they're within 10, 12 bucks of each other per square foot.
Anybody else?
Yes.
There's a lot of, the difference between the experience here and with this is that we're sitting down with the individual and understanding from them exactly what their needs are before that would happen.
Our specifications included all the internet drops that they needed in the rooms and everything else. This building was laid out. I actually met with our architects and engineers at the time in Gainesville on multiple occasions and went over these. But the layout was to accommodate 5-zone air conditioning system. That's why the mechanical rooms are located where they are, shorten the distance between the condensing units outside and the actual air handlers inside, and then still zone those systems so that they're not overlapping. Mechanical rooms were also designed to accommodate the division of the electrical in that facility.
Further comments? Everybody satisfied? Closing comments?
Question? Maybe everyone here has a question. But on your next agenda, I'm prepared to bring whatever you want me to bring back to you for consideration. We're going to consider Eddie Basin, and we're going to consider the overlooked property.
We also wanted to consider what the
And an
price
appraisal.
was, appraisal on Mizell's property.
Okay.
And Barry, is that, those two other properties, I mean, are they
know that one of them was available, a little house over here on the corner, available.
On the place and the other place. Complete block.
Randy, you did mention the wells, and I know that you'll figure that into the feasibility on the netty basin, but the setbacks, and the landscape and all that, yeah. See if they'll give us some allowances that we ordinarily wouldn't have.
We all also gotta look, think about how much, if you buy additional property and you take it off the tax roll, how much is that going to cost? There is, could be a cost. Revenues were going.
Jim Ward, Branford. I've always said the Netty Basin property here seemed to me to be the way to go. Regardless, here, the overlook. I want to mention something that I mentioned when the Catalyst site first started years ago, before any of y'all was on it. I asked the commissioners about the underlying geological structure of the property out there, if it was suitable. Yeah, it is. We've had drilling, everything. Well, you know how that all turned out. Before you commit to either of these sites, I again say you need to pay attention to the underlying geological structures. Make sure they're suitable for the size of building that you're wanting to do. I think we're all aware that this downtown area has problems with underlying geological formations. If I remember correctly, when the jail was being built, I read an article one time where it was actually the site of an ancient landfill, or an old landfill. We all know what this big hole over here is. We all know what happens here when we have very large flood events. Don't forget to look at the underlying geological formation if you haven't already.
Mr. Ward, you make an excellent point, and on the overlook property, in preparation for discussion with the commissioners, I had gotten a quote on ground penetrating radar, if we ever get to that point, that I can present to the commissioners, but I was concerned with the same thing.
Anything else?
I have one, just, I will caution the commissioners about a phrase I've heard, I've built a couple of houses in my lifetime, and, the phrase, while we're at it, we caution you about that, you know, try to think ahead of anything you want this building to be, because that while you're at it, that can be very costly.
Question, Mike Coon. What was the cost on this building? What did y'all have? What did y'all have a contract on?
Oh, I don't.
What was the original contract? Okay, so it's 600,000 over budget. Why was it 600,000 over budget? Because you didn't have a hard set of plans for somebody to bid.
No.
So y'all are already saying
That isn't
it's not true?
That isn't what the problem was with this building.
Why was it 600,000 over
Well,
budget?
you had someone that was trying to handle it at the time that didn't know how to put all the pieces together. It was part of the other
They
piece
didn't meet
was,
with the judges and find out
yeah,
exactly what all their needs
they
were.
came,
You didn't have a hard set of plans, basically, that somebody needed to go over.
they did a hard set of plans. Now, I wasn't involved in it, okay? But
I know
the
you
county
wasn't.
did
That's
a
why I'm
hard set of
asking
plans.
what the budget was and what the overage was.
And what happened thereafter was the gentleman that was handling it started meeting with the judges. And then after the fact, the judges brought in a lot of additional, I guess parts of it were state requirements on recording equipment. It was mostly technology that had to be added in that the judges said were required at the time.
What's the square footage of this building? 5,500. Okay, so you're building, you got a quote on a 10,000 square foot building? Or no, 12.5? So he's doubled, I mean, so I'm just wondering where your cost is coming from. I just want to know how you can be,
It's an entirely different building, entirely different technology. This technology isn't going to be required in the state attorney's office.
you just said the 600,000 overage was the technology.
The furniture wasn't
I've built several commercial buildings. They're not furnished like this. And I'm building one right now, and it's about $15 a square foot for just a shell and the concrete. So I just don't know where he's getting his numbers, or y'all getting your numbers from. Right at $15 a square foot. Building an 8,400 square foot building right now.
The main thing is in this particular case, in this effort, what we've done differently is we made sure that we went to who needs the building and get exactly what their needs are before we even sat down.
And so the plans you have drawn up are exactly that?
He doesn't have the hard plans yet.
Well, I don't know how you can get a hard number. I mean, I do a lot of bidding, and we do $1 million jobs, and if we don't have a hard set of plans, we can be off to a $300,000. I mean, y'all are trying to go ahead with something to say you're going to let McGinnis build it. I'm nothing against McGinnis at all, but I just think you need to make sure that everybody you get bid the job is somewhat comparable. Besides saying somebody's 1.2 or 900,000, then when he gets in there, well, we need to change this or do this or change that, then it's 1.2, 1.3, or it's another 400, 500,000 over budget. Is where I'm trying to get to. Where, I mean, as in, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you have to really figure it up. But I mean, with the offices we put in them, I mean, it depends on what kind of square footage. I've never had anything that had 10,000 or 12,000 square foot of commercial offices in it. Thank you.
Anybody else?